So, hi everybody and welcome back. This is a C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 66, and in this video we continue with our try catch block because we learned in the last video the user-defined try catch block where I used the throw keyword to intentionally check if an error can happen in the try block, and then we caught this in our catch block, and we defined here some error codes, and we reacted to special error codes with actions we ignored here. With the error code 1 we ignored the error and continued with our code. With error code we said no, we don't continue with our error code, we exited. And now here I have copied out an example of the web, what they use, and in this example you can see they are not using the throw keyword, which we expect here in the try block between this curly brackets. There is no throw keyword. Why? The point is here, here an error occurs, still an error occurs behind the scene. And let's go through it and then I show what I mean. But the problem is this code, you probably don't know all parts because I copied it from the web, and they use here a vector. But a vector is just like an array, and it is called a vector, and it's a little bit different here. But let's go from top to down. So it starts with an outprint. This line we already know, it's just a normal outprint, and says creating a vector of size 5. So they are describing what they are creating here. And you can see this is a vector. And here they say the vector is, the type is int and has size 5. And they use this bad variable name phi. Like I said, don't use short names, yes, but they use, and this phi is indicating a vector. That's bad. Don't follow these examples of the web sometimes. Use long, nice variable names, which is very descriptive. Later we don't know what we have here, but let's continue. So then they use again an outprint, and they say accessing the 11th element of the vector. And here we see already, wait, what? 11th? Here on top they said creating a vector of size 5, and here they are trying the 11th element. So here we can see already this will be an error without knowing the code if they do this one. And how they are trying to access this code is here stdc out, and then similar to our array, but they use here a little bit more things which we not learned so far. It's similar to our array where you say int, for example, the array variable name, array variable, and then brackets 10 or something like that in this case. So, and here they wrote as a comment, this will cause a problem. Yes, that we expected after you tried to access the 11th element and only created 5. And they say here throws std out of range, but this throws is a comment, right? And comment means this will be ignored. So with other words, this throws behind the scene, which we can't see it here, also something also creates an error behind the scene. The only thing is here it is not used the throw keyword, and then they jump to the catch block again, and this one looks also a little bit different. We used here a number block, this int error code, and they use here this std exception e. Let's rename this e because I really don't like names which we can't define later. Let's say error occurred here, and here also error occurred. Makes a little bit more sense now. And this variable means, okay, here on the try block an error occurred, and I give it here to this variable here. You can use it. And this class here is important because this class is the standard exception class which they use. And why they use the standard exception class instead like us here in the bot a number, because here we have to define what this to is, right? What is this to? And I defined it here on the bottom in the catch block. To is a error which can't be ignored. One is an error which can be ignored. But in this case, this exception class will define what kind of error here on the top occurred and how yes, it is doing behind the scene again a little bit. And I show you this exception class here. This is the code which I copied actually, this one here. And here is this exception, and I click on it, and then we can here see this std exception class checks all these errors which you can see here behind the scene. And the nice thing is we don't have to type them in. It is checked automatically. And the only thing what we have to do is to see which error is found if it's found one of them, we can check this. And this is this next line here. Error occurred. This variable name is this exception class. So I created a variable with the type exception. And I use this variable here and I ask what. And this is with this dot we have also not learned. This is later for class access, member access. And later when we talk about class, we will learn this. And what does this do is it goes to this variable here, which is now this exception type, and checks what it found. And when we start this code here, let's see what happens. So let's follow this one more time. Here, the output, create a vector of size 5. Yes, accessing the 11th element of the vector. Yes, and then here a standard exception was caught. Then here behind the scene, this throws std out of range. So here at this point is an error occurred behind the scene, and then it is given to this variable name, and then we can read here on. Exception was caught with message, and interesting, a standard exception was caught with message, and then you can see this here. Error occurred, variable name, or other type is exception. It will check one of these types here, which is of this. We can see out of range is here. You see, one of this is out of range. I found it. Okay, out of range, and we can see it. It says here invalid vector. Actually, it's not. Yeah, it says here invalid vector, but interesting is it is normally a out of range type. So that's also a one bad thing you have really later analyze, go through all these classes, what they are actually, and I did it not do. So for example, you have to click this one and check what is this out of range. But later because this one is a little bit too complicated to understand now, we need learn more about classes and functions and so on. This is just a beginning, right? We are starters, we are beginners. And then, but very interesting is here also, this program continues here, and that can cause a problem. Why? Because here it says, okay, I found an error, and at this point, it say, okay, I found an error, the error is invalid vector subscript, but actually it has not handled this error, all right? So let's close this and let me explain what I mean. What I mean with it has not really handled it till this point. This code has just realized an error, but okay, what is the next step? In my example here on the last video, I said, okay, we found also an error, and this error should throw this number 2, and this number 2 will handle now the code, which means stop the code, because this one is a very dangerous error. I don't want if it, for example, on the other side, if this throws a 1, okay, this one you can ignore, you can continue. In this case, it is just messaging us what this error is. And that means actually after, for example, a standard error occurred, you have to go on to do something with this information, which means we have now to check if we want to stop this program because it's danger, or if we say can be ignored because it's again one of these errors, which means just a value was higher than it is. Let's say from 1 it was 2, and this would be print out on a score. Okay, this one will not break the game or break the program or break the app, but it will still be a error and it will be logged as an error, and then you have to decide you can ignore it or you should. No, it can crash the error perhaps, and I mean it can crash the device or the PC or whatever. No, we have to stop. So what I mean with that is you have continue here, depends on the error, and write a little bit more code to handle this error. Let's say we can say, for example, if let's say we can make here something like, let's create here int error code. Let's create an int error code again. And this time this int error code will depend on what this exception is, right? We have to create something like I don't know, a checker what this one is, and this one creates an error code, and then depends on that we can take action, right? So then you write here error code equal 1, and then you can take action again. So but this time depends on this one here, right? You can say here's exit, for example. No, not so, std exit for example, with this one here. This one would exit now the program here if this error code is 1. Let's set it to 1, and this one will be set it by this one, depends on what you need. You have to set it, then check what this error code is and need. And when I start this one, you can see now it's not continue anymore. It says okay, stop here at this point. And one more info, this exit here, what I use, you had to use this include stdlib. That was very important. I think I forgot to mention that in the last video. And the next thing what I want to talk here also is there is one more thing, and the next thing is we can do actually create here one more catch block. This was also what I forgot to mention, and this catch block can again something like this int error code, but there is one alternative. For example, you can create again a int error, custom error, something like that, and then you define all the things what you think can happen, custom error, and then there is again one more catch block. You can even write here many catch blocks you want, but there is one last catch block, our last default catch block, and it is like this 3 dots here. So with that you have it's like a default catch block, and this 3 dot means all the catch blockers which you defined before can't handle the error, or it's not defined for this error what happens here, and then it will say doesn't matter, I don't care what kind of error occurs, I will activate this block here for you, and you can handle it then on your own on your own thinking or something like that. But let me explain fast why we use perhaps these 2 blocks here, because the problem here is on the standard exception you can see they cover not all cases, right? They cover only this kind of cases, which is really good, but still there can happen something which is not included in this exception list here. which means it can happen something that it is not included in this exception list here on top. That means it will be not activated here. This one will be skipped actually, because I have no clue what this is. And then you can catch it with your own block. And if this one is also not thrown for any reason, because there was anything happen which was unexpected at all, you can, but it is happen here, you can use then this catch block, and here you have to decide if you want to stop it or not. Yes, this one, this catch block catch anything. That's why it is this last default catch block most time. And if anything means most time you have no clue what happens. Because normally if an error happens, one of this catch blocks should catch it. The standard exception should catch it, or this custom catch block should catch it, because if it's not in the standard one. And this one you should only use, or still use it, but it means you have really no clue what happened and why it happened normally. And this can be danger, can be not danger, and then you have to think about this a little bit more deeper. So I think I talked much now. This is of course the beginning. There are many things here to consider and so on, but for beginners, for our start, let's wrap this one more up. First, you have a code. You start normally not with a try catch block, right? You don't start with that. You start with a code which you created in your program, and after this code you say, perhaps I need to try this. Perhaps you say you have already a thinking, or you anticipate that this can go wrong, and then you say, okay, I think this code can go wrong. Let's put it in a try catch block. This is the way what you do then. Okay, let's put it in a try catch block. And then you have to decide which you go, a standard exception. Normally you would go for this solution, this standard exception, because then if one of this standard exception occurs, you can handle this one and then catch it and then react on this one. Of course, you can add this other catch blocks too, just in case, because it's not catched, but normally you can anticipate, depends on the code, with more experience, what kind of errors can happen. Right now not, we are beginners, but later you just read here a little bit the code, and what you put later in the try code, you can see what kind of errors can happen. And then you can use this standard exception, or you write a little bit more, you write your own catch block, or you say, I put all code inside. Let's say you put a big chunk of code here in this try block, and then say, in this case I have really no clue what can happen, but I still want to catch it. Then you can use this last default catch block, which is not considered to be good, because this one is, like I said, yeah, it just happened, but you have actually no really clue what happened. But still, you want to catch it. And later there's one more thing which I have not, here I talked a little bit in the last video. There will be later a log file. You can generate a log file, which is an extra data text for the programmer. It's generated behind the scene, where this error occurred, and after the program stopped, for example, the programmer can check this file and see what happens, where it happens, when it happens, which line it happens. Depends on the log file how good it is. He can find this error and fix it later, and then that's it. Okay, I think this must be trained later, but at start we should only know there is something like a try catch block. Later we will see real life examples, and then you see, then all this kind of stuff will make sense, right? Okay, if you have any questions, again in the comments. If not, very nice. And of course, watch this all kind of stuff online again in a book or online, with where it describes much more deeper, more accurate. This is just a way what I show you here for practical use, which means, like I said, in practical you just start with the code and then you use the try catch block later around it to check the code, and that's it. So in practical way you make it very fast. Actually, you don't think so much about it, only because this one you think a little bit much. What kind of exception can happen? Yes, that's the point which you should think. But later, if you have some experience, then you will see it comes all time. Let's say most time at the similar exception will occur, right? Similar things. And you know, this can occur, then I use this. This can occur, then I can use this. And then you think not much too, because as a programmer, not to think much, we want to go fast through and concentrate on our task, not on to figure out how we use a try catch block, right? Okay, that we'll learn here at the beginning. All right, that's that. I stop the video. See you in the next, and good luck. Bye.